I would like to introduce to you our keynote speaker for the night, a Nigerian business magnate and founder of Silverbird Group. He currently serves as chairman and chief executive officer to the Silverbird Group, which span across radio, TV, cinema, shopping mall, and a record label. He served as a director at Secure Electronic Technology PLC. He serves as a director of National Sports Lottery PLC. He serves in various public positions, including Director General of Nigerian Television Authority from 1999 to 2003, member of the Board of National Arts Theatre, Nigerian Film Corporation, Federal Film Censor Board, National Film Distribution Company, and Nigeria Anti-Piracy Action Committee. He is currently the Senator of Bayelsa State of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome to the stage Senator Ben Murray Bruce. Come on, y'all, give it up. Come on.
Thank you very much. Let me say how honored I am to be here today. I had no idea I would speak last. I thank Ken and Amelia for inviting me. I'm grateful for Senator Shaba Lafiaji, my very good friend in the Senate. Biodun Shobanjo, who I met in 1980. We started our careers about the same time. He had a small office, I had a smaller office. But together, we share a history. He became a very rich and very, very successful and innovator, a great man who, like Donald Trump, had the Apprentice show, and I used to watch it all the time. Please give him a big round of applause. Fella who is an incredible motivational speaker, loved your speech. Peter Obi said to me, we're gonna put you in the next government, which we will take over very soon. Stock Exchange. President of the Stock Exchange, our friends at the consulate, because my wife needs a new passport, so I'm coming after you. He said doesn't have any booklets. But I'm happy to be here. In coming here today and I listened to the speeches, I had to think about what I wanted to say and the speech I had written and try to understand why we're here and the concerns you have. You're in the diaspora. But like you, I came here to America when I was 18. I went to 3 universities to get 1 degree. Simpson College, Indianola, Iowa, then Iowa State University, then University of Southern California, where I graduated in 79. But those 3 universities taught me something. In Iowa, in 76, we had a presidential primaries. My true love as a person from the age of 10 was politics. And as a kid, I followed Awolowo and Akintola in the fight in Western Nigeria. I saw dead bodies growing up as a child. Then we had the Civil War in 67. My best friend from 67 to 70 was a radio. I was a child. But I always listened to Radio Biafra and Radio Nigeria. I understood the war and I understood history on purpose. And so at the age of 10, I always felt that one day I'd get a PhD in political science. I loved politics from the age of 10. And my father's best friend at the time was Vice Admiral Way, the Vice President of Nigeria. He used to come by the house. And my brother was conscripted into the war on the Biafran side as a pilot. And his classmate was General Abdul Salam, where they were training in Germany in the 60s. He was in the Air Force before he switched over to the Army. And he would come by the house, and Vice Admiral Way, when he got into the house, he would stand on his head. And I said, Uncle, why do you do that? He said, he used to say to me then, he said, because I want to be pretty. He was a very funny man, but he was Vice President of Nigeria, and once every 2 weeks he'd come by the house and come and spend time with us. And I remember in 75, One day, we were at home. Gawan was in Kampala, and the government had been overthrown. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. They woke him up in Ikoyi and they said, Vice President, we have troop movement. They're about to overthrow the government. And he said to me, he asked them 2 questions. Who was leading the attack? And where was it coming from? They said the Brigade of Guards was leading the attack, and Joe Garba was in charge of the attack to overthrow the government. And he said to them, surrender. And he said, Vice President, Gawan is in Kampala with Idi Amin. We cannot surrender, we must fight. And he said to them, if you fight, you will die like Ironsi in Ibadan. Surrender. So that night, he surrendered. Muritala Mohammed became president, and he drove straight to my father's house in Yaba. And for 1.5 years, he stayed with us in one room. I had no idea a vice president would be so poor and didn't have a house, but he stayed with us for 1.5 years. One day at lunchtime, I said to him, Vice Admiral Way, Muritala Mohammed, what do you think about him? And he said to me, Muritala Mohammed would not survive. He would be overthrown. As a kid, I said to him, I felt he was jealous. And he predicted Muritala Mohammed would be overthrown. A few months later, Muritala Mohammed was killed. And from that day onwards, as a kid, when an older person talks to me, I listen. Because the knowledge they possess, I may never have in my lifetime until I get to that age. He predicted accurately what would happen to Nigeria. Muritala Mohammed was killed. And from that day onwards, I started listening to him. And I started understanding. And he said to me, look, at the Supreme Military Council meeting, when Gawan was going to Kampala, they had a meeting. And unfortunately, we did not keep records of our country. Muritala Mohammed came back at that meeting and said, Gawan, do not hand over power to civilians in 76. I tell you, don't hand over power to civilians. But if you listen to the broadcast in 75, Muritala Mohammed said the reason Gawan was overthrown was because he refused to hand over power to civilians, because we did not keep records. And that is very important. But when I came, that was a side story, by the way. When I came to America, and I was in Iowa, the campaign then was between Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. So I attended the rallies of Gerald Ford and I attended the rallies of Jimmy Carter, Democratic and the Conservative Party, Democratic and Republican Party. And as I listened to Jimmy Carter and as I listened to Gerald Ford, Nixon had just been impeached in 74. I began understanding politics American style as opposed to politics Nigerian style. Don't forget, it was military era. I was close to the vice president of Nigeria. We had seen governments being overthrown periodically. We had no experience with civilian government except 1960 to 66 when we had a parliamentary system. But my true love at the time was politics. That was always my true love. Not entertainment, not show business. I didn't like any of that. I was really fascinated by Nigerian politics. And so I listened to Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. But when Gerald Ford came to Iowa, he got on stage and he said, the first thing he said that came out of his mouth was, I am happy to be in Ohio. And I said, if he didn't know where he was, I didn't think he'd win the election. Jimmy Carter won in 76. But something then happened that excited me. Let's go back to 1970. The war ended in 1970. When the war ended in 1970, I heard on radio one day that Soul Brother #1 was coming to Lagos to perform. I told my uncle, I said, I want to see James Brown. So they took me to the airport, 1970. It was a tiny little airport. It was just a little fence between us and the aircraft. And James Brown plane landed. And the inscription was sex machine on the plane. When he got out of the aircraft, the crowd burst through this little fence and got to the aircraft. When James Brown got out of the aircraft, he stayed at Federal Palace Hotel, and we chased him all the way to Federal Palace Hotel, and we even knocked at his door to say hello to him, but he wouldn't let us talk to him. Anyway, that was my first experience with entertainment. In 1976, on campus, I woke up 6 o'clock one day, and on the radio, they said Elvis Presley was going to be performing at Iowa State. I was really excited. By 10 o'clock, I went to buy tickets for Elvis Presley. When I got there, the tickets were sold out. I bought the last ticket. So the show was advertised at 6. The tickets were sold out by 10 for 18,000 seater. So my first experience in entertainment was James Brown in 1970 at the Nikon Stadium. That's why I'm upset the stadium has been knocked down, because that stadium, I saw Pele, I saw James Brown, Johnny Kwango, boxing, wrestling, and all of that. That was history for me. And then I saw Elvis Presley. After the Elvis concert, which was just electrifying, 3 months later, I walked downstairs from my apartment, I saw Des Moines Register, the king is dead. So I had the privilege of seeing Elvis just before he died. But what I saw made me think. I said, if in 3 hours you could sell 18,000 tickets for a show, there's something in this business. And at the same time, I saw Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. And I said, there's something in politics. But it was different from the politics I'd seen. It was military regime after military regime. And don't forget, then the vice president of Nigeria was staying at the house. And so I was a confused kid. But then I transferred to the University of Southern California. When I got there, bingo, everything changed. On campus, one day, I was walking on campus, and as I looked up, I saw Bob Hope. He had a comedy show with, I can't remember who was on stage with Bob Hope. They had USC has an alumni of Spielberg and folks like that. But every day on campus, there was a superstar. And one of the superstars that I met in school was Kunta Kinte, Liver Burton. He was one of my schoolmates. And then I met a young guy who said to me he was a teacher. And I said, you're a teacher, Louis. I said, but who do you teach? What school do you teach? He said, no, I teach celebrities. I said, like who? He said, Janet Jackson, who are the guys in different strokes? Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges and Dana Plato and all those kids. So he used to take me to the set. So I met Todd and Dana and Gary Coleman and all those guys, and Ralph Carter of Good Times. When I met them, I realized there was the show and there was the business. So there's show business. And I said, well, maybe as a kid, 19, 20, maybe I could make some money doing this. As I was looking at them, Gary Coleman was 10 years old. And after the show, the mother would ask me to take him home. So I would drive Gary Coleman and his mom home, and he would stop at the train station. He'd stop at the train. He loved trains, so we stop at the train station. He'd play with trains, and the young kid would go out there, hug him, and do autographs and things like that. That is how I got into entertainment. When I graduated in '79, I had to decide, do I stay in America or do I go back to Nigeria? Then a friend of mine called me and said, look, I have a deal for you. For $50,000, we can get into the promotions business in America. But $50,000 in 1980 was 25,000 naira. It was $2 to the naira. And I said, I had a choice. Stay in America and do concerts or go back to Nigeria. It was an easy decision for me to make. I was young. I got engaged at 19, got married very young. 22, 23, I said, look, what do I have to lose? So I left my wife in America and went back to Nigeria. When I got back to Nigeria, my salary was 200 naira. I said, but 200 naira? The good thing was the ticket to Los Angeles was 600 naira. I said, okay, what the hell? I'll work a couple of months and come see my wife in America. And that's when I saw Biodun Shobanjo. And that's when I met Jim Oviet. That's when I met Aliko Dangote when he was the richest man in Oni Apapa. So I met a lot of people. But what was tough for me at the time, and Biodun can attest to this, we had only one radio station, FRCN. Only one TV station, NTA. 3 newspapers, Daily Times, New Nigeria, I think Punch. That was all we had. So I went to Daily Times one day and I saw one of the directors. I said, look, I want to do an event. He said, let me tell you something. If the president of the United States comes to Nigeria, we may decide not to feature the president. There's nothing you can do. And think about it. It was a monopoly. It was a monopoly. And they could do whatever they liked. It was hell to promote a show. It was hell to do anything because they had a monopoly. It was a terrible state to be in. The opportunities you have today, we didn't have then. And don't think crime is a lot more than it was then. After the Civil War, we had small arms all over the country. Robbery was the biggest industry. General Gowon created a bar beach show where he'd shoot armed robbers at the bar beach to stop crime. That didn't work. He said, well, I have a better idea. I'll shoot you where you were born in your village. And that didn't work either. So he shoot you in Lagos. That didn't work. Shoot you in your village. That didn't work. We had Is it Anini at the time? He robbed the rich and gave the money to the poor. So we had all kinds of crazy characters at the time. So there was always crime in Nigeria. But you had to figure a way to survive. You had to figure out a way to survive. It was tough. So we came back, we tried to survive. We fought battles all day long. When we put posters on the streets to promote my concerts, we printed a paper and we used Eba at the back of it because we couldn't afford any gum. But I didn't really care because I had nothing anyway, and my father was a shopkeeper. And when you had a father who ran a supermarket, my father's supermarket was given to him by Chief Shonekon, who later became president of Nigeria, but he was a lawyer for UAC, and he gave my father Domino stores as a retirement in 1964. So my father never was, my father didn't know the difference between gold and fake gold. And today, I don't know the difference between real gold and fake gold either, because I don't care about things like that. Jewelry and stuff like that is not something I'm familiar with, and I don't care about things like that. It just doesn't bother me. But I had two dreams in my life. One was entertainment, and one was politics. And every day I woke up, there were the only two things I thought about: entertainment and politics. And I wanted to make a difference by choice. I was never driven by money. I was never driven to acquire wealth. All I wanted to do was make a difference. When I became a concert promoter, that's what I wanted. When I did pageants, because I saw Miss Nigeria one day in 1980, they invited me to the show for 6 p.m. I went there at 5:45. The show didn't end till 5 o'clock in the morning. What I saw was so appalling. I said, I'm going to create my own pageant because I could not watch a show like that. But when I created The Most Beautiful Girl in Nigeria, my sole objective was to win Miss World. That was all. I'm not doing it because I loved pageant that much. I wanted to win. I always wanted to be the best on earth, not to be the best in Nigeria. And the day we won Miss World was a great. I know Obasanjo called me on the phone, congratulating me because I was working for government. And it was so strange. I was Director General of NTA. The show was going on. And if you notice in Nigeria, you don't mess around with the news. So the show was live. At 8:30, the director of news called me. He said, we got to stop transmission and carry the news. I said, no, I have a good feeling about the show. 8:45, he called me. He said, Director General, the president is watching the news. There's a big event. You have to stop this Miss World nonsense you're doing. I said, stay on. At 5 minutes to 12, he called me again. I said, stay on. By 9:45, we had won Miss World. And that was a big event for Nigeria. And I think if you have a dream, you're only limited by level of your imagination. Because it is tough doesn't mean you can't do it. Because it seems impossible doesn't mean you can't try it. You have a chance to be whatever you want to be at any point in time, anywhere in the world. It is hard and tough, but you must never give up. When I wanted to do a cinema in Nigeria, the bankers told me it couldn't be done. They told me I was crazy, but we built it. Now the cinemas all over Nigeria, but people forget how it happened. When we had private radio and TV, they said it. One day my banker called me and said, Ben, I feel sorry for you. I said, why? He said, you've been building this radio station for years. You don't even have a license. I said, but if we don't build it, how are we going to run it? How are we going to change this country? When I became a concert promoter, we had only one radio station. It drove me crazy. I wanted music. I'm not interested in news. I was never interested in the politics of radio and TV. I just wanted pure entertainment. Anyway, the rest is history. Where we built malls and the other stuff. Now, when I did all of that, the truth is I got bored. I got really bored. Obasanjo appointed me Director General in 1999. I worked with him for 4 years. In working with him, I lived in House 8. And I remember General T.Y. Danjuma. One day I went to see him. He likes drinking palm wine. So we were talking, drinking palm wine, and he said, and I know why Abacha didn't want to leave the villa. I said, why? I'd never been there. He said, Ben, if you get to the villa, the garden is just unbelievable. It is so beautiful. Nobody want to be in the villa and leave the villa. Anyway, 99 showed up. I supported Obasanjo when he ran for president, and he won. So there I was in the villa, and I lived in House 8. And I was told the room I lived in was the room Abacha died in. But nobody told me at the time. So I lived in House 8. And the first day I walked into the villa to go see the president, a giraffe was walking in front of me. And this monstrosity, a giraffe right in front of me. And the guard said to me, the SSS guy said, listen, when Abacha was here, there were no visitors. So the giraffe would walk from the back to the front. I mean, the giraffe was in front of me, destroying all the plants and just walking all by itself across. So I said, what do you have here? They said they had lions and giraffes and all kinds of animals. I said, okay, show me around. Took me to the back. I saw 2 lions in a cage. I saw all kinds of animals. It's a beautiful zoo at the back there. And every time you go from the residence to the office, there's a giraffe on the left. But they blocked it off, so the giraffe don't kill anybody. But that's a beautiful place. But in working for government, I had the unique opportunity to be in the private sector, working for government, and I make laws. But in working for government, when I got into NTA's revenue was 300 million naira. And I said, how can I run a 300 million naira company? It's embarrassing. I'm not going to run a 300 million naira company. I said, get me the books. Tell me why this corporation is making 300 million naira. So I started doing my checks. In 3 months, it went to 1.5 billion naira. Now, how do you go from 300 million naira to 1.5 billion naira unless someone was doing something terrible? When I left, it was doing 4 billion naira. NTA is worth 10, 20 billion naira. But the point is, there are certain industries that should not be led for government to run. It should be run by the private sector. Now, I make laws for Nigeria. In the Senate, I see Nigeria differently from most people because every day we have motions and bills and debates on different issues about Nigeria. So things I never thought about, I see. Take NNPC. NNPC, I would describe as a gangster organization of Nigeria. That's what it is. The fraud is unbelievable. They do not put their money into the TSA account. That is why they can spend $500 billion and nobody knows about it. If all the revenue was in a TSA account, that could never happen. NNPC is a gangster organization. Government is so inefficiently run, it's a disgrace to the human race. 71% of the national budget is spent on recurrent expenditure. Will Biodun Shobanjo spend 75% of his gross revenue paying salaries? Will 2.2 million people cause you to spend 71% of your national budget? Doing what? Now, they present the budget. The people who present the budget must have an IQ of -5. All they do is copy the budget from the year before. Line item, every ministry, you'll see. 150 million naira for computers. X amount for cars. X amount for repairs. Oh, then you love this one. 1 billion for training. So when they had the budget defense, one of the ministers said, I said, last year you had $1 billion naira for training. 2 years ago you had $1 billion naira for training. This year you have $1 billion naira for training. I said, by the way, are you training the same people? Or a different set of people? Why do you spend all this money? How on earth? How can you be so inefficient? And then if you want to change this administration, why do you keep repeating the same line item for the budget every single day? What purpose does it serve? My people live under the tree. They live in abject poverty. And I said to myself, the changes I made in the entertainment industry in Nigeria, the same changes I'm going to make for politics in Nigeria. It can never be business as usual. We cannot sit here and a few people consume the resources of Nigeria. We cannot sit here and bankrupt our beautiful country. NNPC cannot be the gangster operation of Nigeria, exploiting all of us. How can you hide $500 million in expenses and nobody knows about it? What sense does it make? Are you in government to loot the treasury? Are you in government to impoverish Nigerians? Are you in government to expose your stupidity and ignorance? What sense does it make? I have a bill. Now, let me tell you, Nigerians in the diaspora contribute $22 billion to our economy. You are the greatest foreign direct investor to Nigeria. Oil makes between $18 and $30 billion a year. Combined, we have a $50 billion economy. You account for over 50% of the revenue of Nigeria and the budget. But you have no say. So I have a bill that will come up in the National Assembly. You have to tell your senators, I want you to have the right to vote for political office in Nigeria. You pay the money, you have the right to vote. You will have the right to choose your president, your governor, your House of Assembly member, National Assembly member. You must have the right to vote. You pay the money anyway. If you don't vote, you cannot be a part of the system. You must have the right to vote. You must tell your senators to support this bill. You must have the right to vote. You must take your rightful place in Nigeria. We can no longer run Nigeria as if it was some backward country run by a bunch of illiterates, people who cannot read or write, people who don't care about nothing. Let's talk about national security. You're telling me in the modern world, 50 cows and 10 guys with AK-47 can raid you, walking without shoes, raid you for 10, 15 hours, kill men, women, and children, and they can't be caught. I'm not saying North Korea launched a missile and can't be found. I'm not saying Saddam launched a Scud missile from Iraq. I'm not saying Libya launched an attack against Nigeria. I'm talking about 50 cows with 10 guys with no shoes, with AK-47, killing innocent people, and you cannot trace them and arrest one person. You cannot arrest one person. Then in my opinion, leadership is confused. Leadership is confused. You cannot trace one person, and don't make the mistake. It is not Islam versus Christianity. No, it's not. When they went to Zamfara and took over a whole city, the people they took over were Muslims too. It is not Islam versus Christianity, it's the way of life. Don't get confused. Bad people want the spoils of war, spoils of victory. So when they walk into a city, they kill you, they maim you, they take your women, they rape them, they control you. We have a problem. You have a population growing at 2.6% every year. You have an economy growing at less than 1%. For you to look after the population of Nigeria, you have to grow at 15% for 20 years. That is not possible. That is not economically possible. Because it is not possible, you will have a high unemployment. You have 10 million, 11 million kids cannot go to school. You have 1.5 million kids who go out of high school every year. Universities can only take 500-600 people. Kids who cannot go to school. I say kids every day. I say, what do you study? I study English. Well, why the hell do you study English? Because I really wanted to do medicine, but that's all they had to offer me. So I'm going to do 3 years of English, then I'm going to switch to medicine. Your university is producing the same kind of talent you needed in 1952. What sense does that make? In a knowledge-based economy, you're busy producing the kind of kids you needed when there were no telephones, when we could barely read or write. So what is the Minister of Education doing? What is going on? You're building trains that run at 150 kilometers an hour. But you can build trains that can do it 400 kilometers an hour, 500 kilometers an hour. What is wrong with our leaders who do not see technology as the answer to our questions? What is wrong with our leaders who do not understand that we must change? What is wrong with our leaders who do not understand that a knowledge-based economy is the only way for us to have salvation? In 10 years' time, the Nigerian economy as we know it today, almost everybody will be unemployed because the world is changing. 3 years ago, I drove an electric car. And I explained to my colleagues and I explained to the government, this is the direction of the world. I predicted accurately before Europe, before America, before China, that the world would change and electric cars win. I've been driving an electric car for 5 years. And I've had no complaints with my car. So what pleasure would it give me to drive the only electric car in Nigeria? What sense does it make? It's a little car. It's a Kia. I love it. I drive it by myself. Not a big SUV. I drive a little Kia. And if I drive my Kia and it doesn't break down because it doesn't have an engine. So to make an electric car for a third world country is easier and better than to make a combustion engine car because you have 50,000 fewer parts. An electric car is the base, 4 tires, you cover it, and a computer and a battery. That's all it is. So the rest of the world will have to spend billions to retool their factories. We can start from scratch. But our automobile policy, which is a dumb policy, allows people to bring broken down factories to Nigeria, get 0% duty. They come into Nigeria, they take out 4 tires, they said it's a CKD, put the 4 tires back on and get 0% duty and then charge you an arm and a leg for the cars. So my question is this. If you seek public office, and you seek public office to fix the country for what you were elected into, or you were appointed into government, does that stop you from thinking? Does that stop you from understanding why you're in office? Does that make you dumb? Does that make you deaf? You seek public office to impoverish people? Peter Obi said it all. Why do we seek public office? To make people miserable, to make people unhappy, to make people poor? Why do we have a tariff policy for power where power goes up in price by 300%? Wages hasn't gone up for 4 years. Does that make any sense? If you raise prices for goods and services, I can understand a 5% increase, a 3% increase. But how do you impoverish people 200-300%? You raise prices 200-300%. You create a problem for people to become thieves. You create a problem for people to misunderstand what your true intentions are. You create problem because when you're hungry and you're angry, you get a gun and you kill somebody. And that is what we're doing. So if I made a change in entertainment, I will guarantee you I will make a change in politics. We cannot continue like this. We cannot continue like this. There are only two kinds of people in this world. Only two kinds of people. You are either a consumer or you are a producer. But it seems like in Nigeria, politicians, businessmen are all consumers. You are measured by $1 million watch, women by $100,000 bag. That is how we are measured. We are measured by ostentatious living. So, does the bag make the woman or the woman make the bag? Does the car make the man or the man makes the car? If I drive a Kia, an innocent motor, and I'm happy, what difference does it make? What difference does it make? What pleasure do you have as a politician? You walk on the streets and people are dying. People are hungry. People are angry. And you walk on the streets with no conscience, with no feelings, with no understanding of poverty. You walk on the streets as if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. A lot of these guys were born in abject poverty. But it seems like the people who were born the poorest act the most arrogant when they seek public office. So what is it about us? What is it about us? What pleasure do you have seeking public office, in acting like a god? What pleasure do you have? People say to me, you're crazy. You risk your life. You speak about dangerous things. You challenge the system. Well, so what? You have to challenge the system to change Nigeria. We've been trying the same thing since 1960. It has not worked. It will not work. What's going to happen is abject poverty in Nigeria. What's going to happen is a very angry people who are going to explode and risk your life and my life and get us all killed. You will get all killed if we don't stop this nonsense. I'm not interested in statistics that talk about how we get out of recession. It means nothing to me. Recession, the people who voted me into office live in abject poverty. They never had a job last week. They don't have a job this week. They're probably not going to have a job next week. So getting out of recession does not solve their problem. And if their problem doesn't get solved, I am not safe. And if I am not safe, I guarantee you, you are not safe. They have to be safe for us to be safe. And everybody, we have a problem in Nigeria nobody wants to talk about. Our population is growing too fast. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. 2.6%. At the turn of the century, Nigeria will be the most populous nation on earth, more than India, more than China, more than United States of America. The size of Texas. What sense does it make? 100 million people with no jobs. And then you say, oh, it's a great consumer market. Maybe you practice voodoo economics. But where I come from, 100 million angry people doesn't solve my problem. We must take a principled position and address the issues that affect us as a people. We got hungry and angry people who voted us into office. We have leadership that's insensitive to people that voted them into office. We are a corrupt nation and we do not understand the difficulties that we find ourselves. I said the other day, to qualify for public office sometimes is a school certificate. Then you can run for office. But what university teaches you compassion? How do you care about the least of us? Poor people who need help, who you need and they need you. Go to Shoba and you talked about a security company. That is fine. Which means the biggest industry in Nigeria today is security. Because you want to live. The biggest industry is security. You want to live. I speak to the guys in the military. Troops deployed. During the war, we had 250,000 soldiers. Now it's about 70,000. We've not built one barracks for them. They all deployed. If the war ended today and there's no more Boko Haram, the soldiers have nowhere to stay because no barracks have been built. We have the same barracks as we did in the 60s. This is wrong. We must care for us. The soldiers, we have the best fighting force in the world. But when they buy equipment, that is the truth. We have the best fighting force in the world. But when we buy equipment, we buy broken down equipment. Broken down equipment. They jam. I have friends who, one of them came to see me. He said he wanted to talk about what happened in Borno. Sat down with me. I recorded what he said. He said, but don't use it. He said, don't use it, but I just want to tell you what happened. I recorded it. I have the tape. Then he said, he explained to me when he was fighting, they didn't have armored wear. Equipment jamming, breaking down. They had to run to Cameroon at some point. But he said he was going back. He went back. He got killed. Never saw him again, but I have his voice. When that happened, I didn't want to play the tape because I didn't know how to play the tape to his family because he predicted exactly what was going to happen and he died. We have a problem. The problem is serious. If herdsmen can attack by foot and a drone cannot be used to pick up those guys, then there's complicity. It doesn't make any sense. If a satellite can tell me the color of my hair, you're telling me you can't find a guy on foot with 50 cows, not moving very fast, in the bush? You want me to believe that you cannot find 10 guys with AK-47 in the bush? Nigeria is the only country where a ship can go missing. A ship, not a car, not a bicycle. A ship can go missing, and we can't find the ship. You can't find a cow. You can't find a guy on foot. You tell me there's no complicity? It doesn't make any sense. And if we don't ask those questions, we cannot fix Nigeria. You cannot pretend to be deaf and dumb in politics. I took an oath to fight for my people, to defend my people, to make it impossible for bad people to lead Nigerians. That is an oath that I took. And if I pay the price for my position, then so be it. It is a decision that I have made. I've had a good life, and I've enjoyed myself. But Nigeria must survive. It's not just making speeches, talking about it. You must take a position. You must be willing to fight. You must be willing to come home. You must be willing to vote. You must be willing to sacrifice something for Nigeria to improve, for Nigeria to change, for us to have a great nation. Elections are coming. Changes will be made. Nigeria must be a better country. You must vote for people who care about you, people who have run a business, and people who can change Nigeria. It cannot be business as usual. Dumb people should not be in office. Too much money at stake. Too many lives that could be lost. People are going to die. You must be willing to pay the price. You must be willing to invest. I will create the bill to change the law, and you must get your senators to support this bill. They don't support it, you make it possible they don't come back into office. You take them out. You take them out. You contribute, what you contribute for Nigeria, $22 billion every year. That is the size of the Kenyan budget, Kenyan economy. What you contribute. You are the largest investors in Nigeria. You're the largest. Yet you don't have a say. You're treated as outcasts, as nobodies. You beg for everything you want. They disagree with you. They disrespect you. You have problems. Nobody pays attention to you. You die and nobody is concerned. Now you have a chance to change Nigeria. And you have an obligation for yourself and your children. You must decide if you want to live Nigeria must survive. If you want to be successful, Nigeria must be successful. If Nigeria is not successful, you would not be successful. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard a more inspiring speech by a Nigerian? I haven't, and I've listened to quite a few. But I'm so inspired. I'm so ready to take everything I've ever made in America to Nigeria today. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We truly appreciate you. Unfortunately, we did have some people that booked one-on-ones to meet with Senator Bruce. His plans have been altered slightly. He has to leave in about an hour. So for those that did schedule one-on-one meetings with him, we'll create the platform for you to meet with him immediately after these announcements. So if you booked one-on-one meetings with him, please let us meet with Emilia, and we'll arrange a room for you guys to go meet with him briefly because he has to leave. He was planning on leaving tomorrow, but there was some miscommunication with his travel agents, and somebody did not get things right. So let me present this to the Honorable Senator. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. We truly appreciate you and truly appreciate what you're doing for our nation. God bless you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.